How's everybody doing today? Today I was just going to do an intro video to arrays. Now an array is like a variable, except it can have several different placeholders. Usually we use it when we've got a group of related data, and instead of setting an individual variable for each piece of data, we say, well, instead I'm just going to create one array and load all this data into the array. The first example I'm going to show you, I did it with days of the week. You can do it to represent a deck of cards. You've got 52 cards. You could create an array to hold the 52 cards. When you declare an array, you have to specify the type of data. So I said this is a string. The thing that kind of tells C# that this is an array is your square bracket, square bracket. I called this one days of week. And then this next part, I've got equals new string 7. This is the part that designates the size of the array. So I'm saying I want this array to have 7 placeholders. Now, a lot of times we get mixed up because we think, well, it's got 7 placeholders, so the first placeholder is going to be 1, and then 2, and then 3. But a lot of things in programming start at 0, and this is no exception. What happens here is I'm going to create 7 placeholders, but they're going to be 0 through 6. So once I create this array, again it's called days of week, I can start to load the array. When you load an array, you can't just say days of week equal Monday, days of week equal Tuesday. You have to specify the indices of the array, 0, 1, 2. Remember, I go from 0 to 6. So it's days of week, and then my square bracket 0 equals Monday. Notice I had to have it on quotes and a semicolon to end. That will load my first element. Now, what you can do, instead of creating the array and then loading each element separately, you can load it with an initialization list. Some people like this a little better. It's a little bit less typing, and I'm just going to show you that right now. I just scrolled up, and this is the same thing I just did, but it's with an initialization list. So I've got to put string, square brackets, days of week equal, and then I just do my list. It's the same data that's down here, but I don't have to do all this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What happens is the list itself dictates the size of the array, so I don't have to do this part either. It's just string, square bracket, days of week, and then I list them all. Now I do have to have a squiggly bracket to start and a squiggly bracket to end, and commas between each individual item. And since these are string, they have to be in quotes. But this really creates and loads the same array as this does. So, like I say, a lot of people prefer this method just because it's a lot shorter. The next thing I want to do is, now that we've got this array loaded, I want to play around with it a little bit. I've got a button called back and a button called forward. So I'm going to start my program here. And if I hit forward, it says Monday, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, back to Monday. So I can just keep hitting my forward button, and it keeps taking me through these array values. If I hit back, I've got Saturday, Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, etc. So my forward button takes me forward, my back button takes me back. Let's kind of take a look and see how we're actually doing that. First thing, I had to create a little variable. I called it count, and it's an integer. And here's my forward button. So I just have to display in the text box days of week. This is my array. And then I'm using count. I'm using a variable here as the indice. So count starts at 0. Each time I hit the button, count gets incremented. Remember, the plus plus increments it. Now, I do have to be careful because I don't want count to go outside of my range. Remember, I've only got indices 0 through 6. So if count gets up to 7, it would actually create an error. It would crash my program. So here I just put in a little if statement. If count equals 7, then I set count back equal to 0. That's why it goes like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then boom, it goes back to Monday. For my back button, I did a very similar thing. I'm just displaying this into the text box. The only difference here is I decremented count. Count minus minus means it's going to take 1 away from the variable each time. And I said when it gets to 0, I want to bounce it back up to 6. So that's kind of some little code to kind of play around with our array. The other thing I wanted to do in this video is show you how nicely that arrays work with loops. So I created an integer array. So I've got an integer array. I've got int, my square brackets. I just called it array numbers, new int 100. So I've given it 100 placeholders. So remember that's going to be 0 through 99. And then to fill this, what I did is I just set up a for loop. For count equals 0, count less than or equal to 99, count plus plus increments it by 1. So array numbers count, the indice, equals count times 10. Now, what I want you to do is kind of think about, what do you think this is going to fill the array with? Remember, count is going from 0 to 99, but I'm filling the array with count times 10. We're going to see this in just a second in another button. In my other button, I took it just a little bit further, load array integer, and then I fill a list box. So I'm going to look at the code for that. Pretty much I created the same array. I've got my integer count. Now when I set up my loop, my for loop, there is a property that you can use, the length property of an array. So again, my array is called array numbers, but instead of having to put in a 99 here and lock it in at 99, I can use array numbers.length -1. Now why did I do the -1? Well, this actually has 100 placeholders, so I want it to go 0 through 99, so that's why I had to have array numbers.length -1. Anyhow, I'm filling this array same way as I did before, but what I do in the next block of code, I use a different kind of loop. Now, C# gives us a specific loop for each that works with array elements. It's a little bit easier to use. I could have used just a regular for loop here, but for each has some advantages because I don't have to specify where my count starts and stops and how it gets incremented. It kind of does all that for me. Basically, I'm saying for each integer value in this array, this is what I want you to do. And it kind of looks at the array and it sees that it's got 100 values and it just goes through 100 of them. So I'm saying I just want to add these items to the list box. So let's see what this code does. I'm going to run it. I load it, so it loads my array, and now I get to see these items in my list box. Remember, it loaded 100 items, but since in my code I'm actually having count times 10, it multiplied the value by 10 each time, and then it loaded it in. So I've got 0, 10, 20, 30. I go all the way up to 990, which is my 99th spot. Anyhow, hopefully this video has showed you a couple things. How to just create an array, how to load an array 2 different ways, and just how nicely arrays work with loops. Hopefully it was helpful. We'll see you next time.